Kena, Bridge of Spirits is an action-adventure game with a heavy focus on story and art style, combined with a good dose of platforming. As the debut title for Ember Lab, Kena seeks to tie together its emotional narrative with a beautiful graphical style reminiscent of Pixar films, with some light, Souls-like gameplay giving the game a unique feel of a PS2-era action-adventure game mixed with a newer title like God of War. You take the role of the titular character Kena, a spirit guide, an individual that acts as a wayfarer for lost spirits in order to guide them into the afterlife. Kena's journeys have brought her to a small village infested with corruption. It's Kena's goal to clear this corruption, and immediately you quickly get to work on finding Rot. Rot are your little companion buddies who are required for a lot of the abilities Kena possesses, as well as clearing corruption found around the game world. You can send the Rot out to interact with objects in the environment, clear corruption, and by collecting more Rot as you make your way through the game world, your Rot level will increase, allowing you to gain more Rot actions to use in combat.
Death and corruption. All that remain here.
Kena's story is split up into 3 distinct arcs, with the first 2 arcs both feeding and moving the story along in a logical way that hold with Kena's main mission of restoring balance to the village and making it prosperous once again. While the third arc is a culmination of your efforts to clear the corruption in the village, I feel that the first 2 arcs hold a greater significance as far as my investment into seeing them through. They're both emotional and touching tales that do the heavy lifting of the narrative. Unfortunately, the same can't really be said about Kena's own mission or why she's there. Despite learning more about her past later on, the game doesn't really feel like we're on our own journey, but solely helping others while setting the stage for a sequel. Kena's gameplay feels very familiar to older action-adventure games harkening back to the PS2 era. That is to say, combat is quite simplistic, while there are numerous puzzles to solve and quite a bit of platforming in order to move further into the game world. Unfortunately, over the course of the game, the combat doesn't evolve much despite getting new equipment like a bow and bomb you'll obtain as you play through. Though these additions do have a much greater impact on platforming, traversal, and puzzle solving. Kena makes fun use of the bow and bomb as a means of traversal. Despite the game's relative linearity, these additions make traversal go hand in hand with puzzle solving, as you'll be trying to string yourself along as you move forward. Unfortunately, there is some traversal hitching by way of frame stuttering when moving through the game world. It isn't anything major, but certainly noticeable when it happens. Kena makes use of a staff as her primary weapon, with her skill set being further augmented with the inclusion of the bow and bomb later on in the game. The game's Souls-like components really show in boss battles, as they are heavily focused on timing and dodging enemy attacks, and then striking when there's an opening. By attacking enemies over the course of an encounter, you'll build courage. You can use that courage during combat to perform Rot actions. You can create karma by defeating corrupted enemies, restoring the environment, and finding fruit for your Rot to eat. Karma is used to unlock new Rot abilities, and more abilities become available the higher your Rot level. Unfortunately, there isn't much these abilities net you besides expected upgrades like being able to do sprinting attacks or slowing down time while using the bow. While certainly both critical, they're also very much expected upgrades in skill tree, and there are no skills that are truly unique or stand out. One aspect of combat that I really did enjoy, however, was seeing former bosses return as normal enemies later on down the road. During combat, I was having issues with the game's camera. This was especially prevalent when fighting larger groups of enemies, as the camera would attempt to auto-lock on an enemy of its choosing while I would be fighting another enemy. This of course made it hard to gauge enemy distance and evade appropriately, as well as cause a jumbled mess when trying to take out enemies efficiently. Additionally, the control scheme becomes odd when using certain Rot functions that feel quite cumbersome and inundates what should be its inherent usefulness. Another interesting aspect is that health regen during combat is a Rot action itself. While that isn't necessarily an issue, there is a catch. You can only heal within proximity to certain interactable objects. This is really bothersome, as if you need to quickly heal, you can't. You have to make your way to a specific area of the arena, and I really wish this was handled differently. Kena features two graphics modes, one being the performance mode, which targets 60 frames per second with an upscaled 4K resolution, while the fidelity mode locks the frame rate to 30 frames per second while running at a native 4K resolution. The game's graphics are certainly Pixar-esque, being both vibrant and colorful. With that being said, there were quite a few lower resolution assets to be found, though Kena and other characters maintain a wonderful vibrancy. My main issue with Kena's presentation is the FMVs. They feel out of place, as the sudden and drastic shift from 60 frames per second to 24 frames per second is odd on the eyes. In my opinion, much of the gameplay looks better than the FMVs, which makes the switch even harder to understand. While certainly not the most graphically intensive showcase, Kena shows that art style certainly prevails over raw graphical fidelity. In addition, the music goes wonderfully with the setting and ramps up nicely when exploring new areas.
Crafted wooden masks to honor those who have passed on.
Kena, Bridge of Spirits is a tremendous effort for a debut game. Overwhelmingly, the game lives up to what it was aiming to provide: beautiful graphics and a captivating story. Despite where it stumbled, Kena is both a charming and endearing journey. Kena is undoubtedly a brilliant starting point for Ember Lab's future works, and I can't wait to see what other adventures they'll offer. If you like this video, consider subscribing and checking back weekly for more content just like this.